We're Sunday morning, and we're at Pearlstone, one day after celebrating the Bar Mitzvah of Avishai David Moskowitz, my grandson. And this is the Torah scroll from which he read from, not only the Sidra of Shlach Lecha, but a few weeks ago, the Sidra of Bamidbar. And so far, we've been able to take the Sefer Torah to a number of our grandchildren. Salel read from it, and Ezra read from the Torah, and Ariel read from the Torah, and we're trying to take the Sefer Torah to as many simchot as possible for our grandchildren's B'nai Mitzvah. The Torah scroll is very, very precious, to this family. It belonged to my father-in-law, Fred Goldsmith, as he was called, who lived in South Bend, Indiana. And when I was dating my wife and became engaged, I would spend Shabbat there. And the first thing I noticed in the house was there was a Aron HaKodesh and a Sefer Torah. And this is the Sefer Torah. And the Sefer Torah was originally in Schulchtern, Germany. My father-in-law, who was born in 1907, remembered as a young child the Sofer coming to his home and renewing the letters in the Sefer Torah. So obviously, by 1907, the Torah scroll itself was quite old. We're not 100% sure how old the Torah scroll is, but the Torah scroll, according to a Sofer, Rabbi Gedalia Juan, it's well over 150, maybe 200 years old. And it was, from what we've been told, the print, the style of the Safrut is indicative that it was written in Czechoslovakia, and columns are longer than usual. Recently we found out that the Atzei Chaim are made out of walnut wood from walnut trees that grow only in Europe. And the Torah scroll was with the family for many years. David just removed the wimple. This wimple, we don't know who this fellow is, but there's German minhag to wrap a baby in a wimple for his Brit Milah. And on this wimple, which is quite long, which the family then donated to the Beit HaKnesset, you have his name there, Yisachar Bereb Shimon, and it gives Mechune Brona, Heilborn, Brona Heilborn. Nolad, he was born. Let's see, Mazel Tov B'Yom Kaf Kaf. That's 1 second. I think it's Kaf Gimel, I believe. Be'er, and that was in Tar Ad. Okay, so so obviously he has Brit Milah. I think it's now 105 years. I have to do the correct math. So it's 105 years ago. It's very interesting. Anyway, the Torah scroll, when it was in the Goldschmidt home in Schulchtern, it was in the synagogue around the corner from their house. They owned a large home. It was like a square, and they had a farm machinery business. They served the entire community, and people bought farm machinery. They kept people on credit and allowed them to pay out, and they serviced the whole community. At any rate, when the Nazis came to power, they came into Schulchtern, and they proceeded to the small synagogue, and they wanted to burn it down. And first they wanted to burn down the Arona Kodesh. They couldn't get the Arona Kodesh ignited. They didn't have I guess the fuel wasn't powerful enough to ignite this very, I was told, very hard wood Arona Kodesh. And so they said they're going in town, they're going to be back very soon, and they'll complete the job. My father-in-law's sister ran into the shul, grabbed their family Sefer Torah, and took it out. And eventually she went to Berlin and had an apartment in Berlin, and she kept the Sefer Torah there. And then when she was on her way to the United States, she hid it in a trunk and it was sort of covered with blankets and sheets, so no one knew there was a Sefer Torah inside. She then brought the Sefer Torah to the United States, and when my father-in-law finally arrived here, he inherited the Sefer Torah, and he had it in his home in South Bend for many years. And he willed the Torah to my nephew, Mark Lennon, who lives in Skokie, Evanston, and there's where the Torah scroll is now kept. And Mark Lennon and his dad and David and Razi have been kind enough to let us borrow the Sefer Torah for special occasions. And I just recently had a Arona Kodesh built for it, and I tried to convey it from place to place. So we even brought it to Eretz Yisrael. I won't go into that chapter right now. We'll see if Jeremy wants me to tell what happened, which is very interesting in and of itself. But another addition to the story, an addendum to the story, is that, I don't know, about 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, I was a young rabbi at North Adams, Mass. Then we moved to Albany, and I was called one day to come from Albany to do a Brit Milah in North Adams. And I got to